This is the plaintiff, Deborah Higgins. She says she rented a room in the defendant's house, and she soon found out she was living in an unsafe environment. That's right. One of the defendants got into a physical fight with her son. She was verbally abusive to her and changed the locks on the place, forcing her to go to a hotel. There's no way she's going to let the defendants get away with that, and is suing them here and now for the $2,486.12 she's owed. These are the defendants, Sheena Winston and Latia Banks. Sheena says everything was great with the plaintiff at the beginning, but when she wanted to move her Canadian boyfriend in to live with her, things changed. They didn't want a stranger living in their house. The woman stopped paying the rent, and she changed the locks because things started getting scary with her. Oh, her money to stay in a hotel? Ha! They're accused of providing an unsafe environment.
All parties, please raise your right hand.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket, the plaintiff rented a room from the defendants, says it was unsafe. The defendant got in a fight with her son and was verbally abusive, so she moved to a hotel. But the defendants say the problem was she wanted to move her Canadian boyfriend in. It's the case of Canada.
Thank you, Douglas. Deborah Higgins?
Yes.
You are suing Sheena Winston and Latia Banks?
Yes.
Okay. For $2,486.12 that you say you are out as a result of them locking you out of a tenant situation. Tell me what's going on.
Yes, on November 1st, I signed a lease and moved into a room, which I thought was their townhouse at the time. Moved into the room. Things went well.
How did you find the room?
Through Craigslist, and I actually found out it was a situation where I knew Tia before, had roomed in the same, similar situation in another home, so I was comfortable with this environment. So I moved in, and after the first few weeks it was fine. After about a month, the mother moved in, slept on the couch. Then there was a fight outside my door with her son. On the end of January, I decided to go see my fiance in Canada. This was on a month-to-month basis anyway, so I had offered them that I'd give them 30-day notice. I paid them 2 weeks with the understanding that I would pay them the other 2 weeks if everything went smooth for those next 2 weeks. And then...
I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. So rent was due, and rent is due by the month, and you paid half the rent.
By Florida state law says 15 days.
I'm sorry. You're talking about you giving notice.
30-day notice.
Right. So were you giving 15-day notice?
Right.
Right. So then you were supposed to get out February 15th, according to you?
Well, if it was okay to stay for the month, I was going to stay for the month.
But you hadn't paid for the month.
Right. But I was going to pay on the 15th for the second half of the month if everything went smooth.
Right. So are you giving 15 days notice, or aren't you? Are you saying I'm leaving on the 15th, or are you leaving them up in the air about the 15th?
I gave them a written notice that I'd be out by February 28th.
By February 28th?
Yes.
Okay. So then you were late on the rent because you didn't pay the other half because you were holding it hostage to good behavior. I'm not saying I don't see the wisdom of what you did. I'm just trying to call it like it is, right? Okay. So then what happens? You go to Canada what day?
I go to Canada on the 29th.
Of January?
January.
Okay. And you're in Canada for how long?
For 4 days.
Okay. And what are you doing in Canada?
Visiting my fiance.
Okay. And then what happens?
And when I gave them the verbal notice, Sheena seemed fine, and an hour later called back and said, no, that's not okay.
Okay.
Then she demanded that if I don't have the money wired by the 1st...
Meaning the rest of your rent.
Right.
Right.
Wired to her account by the 1st...
I mean, you get it. You're a subletter there, so she has a rent to pay. So you've just shorted her how much money?
$300.
Which means she's got to come up with $300 in order to pay the landlord so she doesn't get evicted. You do get that, right?
In the same time, I found out they're not the landlords. They don't own it. They were illegally subleasing it to me.
Well, did you...
I didn't know that until I was in
you never
Canada.
asked that because you didn't care because you were...
I didn't know
They're your landlord.
No, I didn't know it.
They're your landlord, though, because they're leasing it to... All right, so go on. So then... you receive an angry call from Sheena saying, no, you've got to come up with the rest of the rent. And then what happens?
And then I came back on the 4th, or on the 3rd, technically the night of the 3rd.
Did you come back alone or with somebody?
By myself.
Okay.
And she knew I was going to be late. Her car was at the end of the driveway, which means I couldn't pull my driveway in. In this type of a community, they tow your car if it's not in the driveway. I tried to get in. I've got a video of the tape, me trying to get in, couldn't get in. I knew this was probably going to happen, so I called the police. The first thing the police said is, oh, I know this house. This is the house with the troubled son. He's got anger issues. I said, I just want to get into my home. This is where I've lived for 3 months. I need to get into my home. I have my medications. I only took enough medications to go to Canada for a few days. I need to get in. I got to go to work tomorrow. The police couldn't get me in. At 2:30 in the morning, they stopped attempting, and I knew that they were home.
Were they banging on the door?
Everything. The police, 3 police officers did everything and couldn't get in.
Did you change the locks?
Yes.
I did. I changed the locks because she went to Canada to visit her boyfriend, Russ, in which whenever I called her because she snuck out of the house on Sunday. Deborah has never acted like this, so I am totally blown away by why we're even here.
How long have you two known each other?
Just in the few months that she was
but
living.
you liked her.
Yes.
You guys are friends. All right, so
Yes.
when you say acted like this, she left town and left part of the rent. That's what you're referring to as act.
When she left that Sunday, something was off. Because I got up and then there was a note on my floor that said, call me, sweetie, and $300. So I called her. And so she goes to tell me that she's not sure what she wants to do, that her and her boyfriend are going to move in together. So I'm like, congratulations, that's awesome, that's beautiful. But I was like, wait a minute. Why didn't you tell me that you were going to move in with him, you know, whatever? And she's like, well, I didn't realize that.
Is this by text or by telephone?
This is conversation
Okay.
at this time. So, you know, she's telling me that she didn't realize that until she got to Canada, that they were actually going to move. So I said, okay, I said, well, I'm happy for you, everything. Now, why didn't you pay full month's rent?
Okay, now I understand you, and that's why I was quizzing her and giving her a hard time that you were entitled to the full month's rent. Did you lock her out?
Yes, ma'am. And
Why? Because she didn't pay rent?
No. I locked
Oh.
her out because her boyfriend, this conversation went on. Her boyfriend called my fiance, and he spoke very aggressively to her. He told her that he was going to come down and handle the situation. So...
Tell me about that conversation.
He told me, you don't know who you're talking to, and I'll come down there myself. That's how it's gonna work.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay.
Whenever she would talk to me about her boyfriend, she would tell me that he was very controlling, very jealous, and she would ask, you know, we were friends, so she would ask me certain questions. You know, one day she took a picture in a car, in a Corvette at her job just by herself. She marveled at this Corvette, and she came home and she was like, Sheena, do you think this is something that's really, really bad? Like, I took this picture, but, you know, now Russ is all upset. And she just talked about...
Because she took a picture with a Corvette? Who's jealous of the Corvette?
Yes, and she would talk about his anger, that he would be upset.
Have I now heard every reason that you've lied? Because I hope you have educated yourself since then and realized what the law says about locking someone out in your state of Florida.
So they were scared of the plaintiff's boyfriend. Is that grounds to change the locks?
No. He signed a contract. There's a rental agreement or a contract agreement that...
Yeah, but when you're scared, I mean, don't you have a right to protect yourself even if it's not a direct threat?
Yeah, I think so, but they should have asked first if they wanted to change the locks.
Well, you can't ask the person who's going to say, well, they'll say no.
Communication is key. They should have talked about it and figured it out from the get-go.
But can you change the lock?
Absolutely not.
Okay, going inside the courtroom.
What does the law say?
Well, it says that you can't do that, but
And what happens when you do?
I'm not sure, ma'am. You can educate me and tell me.
I will.
Okay.
3 months' rent.
Okay.
And the philosophy behind this is that we do not want landlords taking it upon themselves to change locks. We have a system for this. It's called the eviction court and landlord-tenant court. And then you're supposed to go there, and then you're supposed to say your side, they're supposed to say their side, and then, you know, the judge is supposed to decide who is correct. You know, she may be withholding rent because there's, you know, roaches you're doing nothing about, or there's no heat, or whatever, you know, so that may be the reason. So you may be right that she's not paying her rent, but they may be, so there's complicated situations in landlord tenants, and we don't want every landlord out there to just go and change the locks on families.
Yeah.
Or single people either. But, you know, we don't want that. So every state has a law against lockout. You can't lock out. You have to do what you have to do. Now, you are not the actual owners of the premises.
Right.
And then when she comes and she can't get it, by the way, were you there when the cops were banging at 2 in the morning?
I was asleep. I don't know if she came.
How hard were they banging?
That's what I want to know.
How hard do they have to bang for you to wake up?
Well, she.
Because I want what you're taking.
Whenever she came, according to the statement, that's what she said, that she was banging. But the whole purpose was so that she could not come in with Russ.
But you can say that all you want, but Russ didn't even fly down.
No.
Okay, so you can say, I was afraid of her, but you're renting it out. And so if you're afraid of people you don't know, don't rent it out. Because anybody who rents from you, according to your own lease, can have a guest over that you've never met before for 2 days. Is there a police report from that night from how threatened you felt about Russ bringing business into his own hands and all that stuff?
No, we didn't.
Right.
We didn't.
Okay, so then I got to be real careful as a judge that you're not just saying that to get out of the trouble you're in for locking out. What did you end up doing? How did you get your stuff?
Well, the next day, I had a couple friends help me get things out.
Right, but how were you let in the next day? With the police?
Her and her mother opened up the door.
Did you just show up with friends in a truck?
Well, no, we made arrangements with them.
What did you do with all of her stuff?
All of her stuff, I neatly placed it. I had no ill will towards her at all, and I would never.
So what did you do with all of her stuff?
In the garage. I even put all of her food on ice in her coolers. I didn't do anything wrong because I.
No, you did, sweetie.
Yeah. Well,
I know you feel like you didn't do anything wrong, but you did something that's completely illegal. You locked out a tenant who you had collected partial rent from. Even if you hadn't collected any rent from, you cannot lock out a tenant. There are laws against that to protect tenants from landlords who take it upon themselves to be judge, jury, and executioner, which you don't have a right to do. Your right was to then go to landlord-tenant court, just like every other mere mortal landlord. And you're a landlord, be there no mistake. You're subletting, you're a landlord. You may not have the right to do it with your. Oh, by the way, did she go then to your?
Oh, she called everyone.
She called your management people and said, they're illegally renting to me and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a risky one. Did you get in trouble for that?
No, my landlord, he was
Okay,
fine.
fine. So that's good. But that's what you're supposed to do is go to landlord-tenant court and sweat it out for a few months like everybody else has to do. You don't get to jumpstart the system and self-help. And the consequence in your state is 3 months' rent. Plus, she didn't get to be there in February and gave you $300, so that's an additional $300. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find her liable for the $2,100 that Florida law allows you to get. Verdict for the plaintiff, $2,100. My hands are completely tied.
So the plaintiff does indeed prevail. $2,100 she gets. You heard the judge. Her hands are tied. You have to pay.
Everything works out for the better for everyone, and it worked out for the best for us. There's no losers here.
Okay. You feel that way?
Yes.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Here comes the plaintiff now. You all right with this?
Yep, I sure am.
Shame you had to go to court to do this.
Yeah, it is.
But what's your situation now?
I moved into my own place and very happy.
And everything's hunky-dory there,
Yes,
right?
everything's
All right,
wonderful.
good enough. All right. How's Russ?
He's doing good.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
You.
Harvey?
Hey, Doug, real quick. The law varies from state to state, but in Florida, for example, you get 3 times the amount, again, varying from state to state. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.